flourish. He returned my sharpened razor to me. I handed him a quarter and told him to keep the change. He whistled at my generous big city tipping habits. Then I stood outside the barbershop in the bright September sun, admiring the dangerous gleam on the edge of the blade. "Why, Ben, you're looking at that razor the way most men look at a pretty girl." I turned around to see Elizabeth Begley standing right there beside me. We were practically elbow to elbow. I was admiring Ezra's handiwork. In all my years of trying, I have never been able to put half as good an edge on a razor. "Oh, Ben, I don't believe there's anything you can't do," she said, "if you decide to go after it." Now what was this craziness? Was my old girlfriend flirting with me? Was I flirting right back? I flicked the razor shut and slipped it into my pocket. "Come walk with me to Jenkins's store," she said. "I bought new boots for Emma, and she's already been through the laces. That's not right." We walked the sidewalk of Commerce Street, which was fairly deserted at this hour. "A little bird told me that you were the guest of honor at the Stringers' dress party the other night," she said. "I wouldn't say guest of honor," I said, "but I guess some people are a little curious what I'm doing back here." "You must tell them all you've come to visit me," Elizabeth said with a smile. "That will get their tongues wagging." She laughed, and so did I. "Speaking of people who love to talk behind other people's backs." She nodded in the direction of Lenora Godwin, who was walking toward us on the sidewalk across the street, apparently lost in thought. "Lenora was at the party," I said. "She's still as well-dressed as ever." "Did she look ravishing?" There was a slightly caustic edge to the question. "She may still be the best dressed," I said. "But I was wondering why the most popular girl at Eudora High wasn't there." "It's simple, Ben. She and her husband were not invited to attend." I was surprised to hear this. I knew that Eudora society, such as it was a small, intimate group. Surely Elizabeth would be included. "I think you know my husband is Richard Nottingham, the state senator," Elizabeth said. "Richard is known to be the political kingmaker." "I did know that," I said. "Well then, put it together. L.J. Stringer never sits down to dinner with anyone more important than himself." "Some people say that Richard will be the next governor," she said. "And what do you think, Elizabeth?" "He certainly wants to be governor, but I don't want to leave Eudora." We had reached Jenkins's store now. "Thank you for walking with me, Ben, and for our talk. Now I have bootlaces to buy." To my disappointment, she didn't invite me in with her, but Elizabeth leaned in and lightly kissed my cheek, then disappeared into the store, the same one where my mother had collapsed when I was just a boy. Chapter 41. My mother used to say, "When you're truly in love, you see the face you love in your coffee cup, in the washstand mirror, in the shine on your shoes." I remembered those words as I sat at my regular table at the Slide Inn, sipping a cup of strong and delicious chicory coffee. Miss Fanny brought my breakfast of fried eggs, creamy, salty grits, a slice of cured ham, and buttermilk biscuits, but I only had eyes for my coffee cup, and Mama's words haunted me. I couldn't stop thinking about Elizabeth. "Yes, Mama, I see her face in the surface of my coffee. Elizabeth." If I were not feeling so lonely and abandoned by my wife, would I be having these feelings? Probably not, but I was feeling lonely and abandoned, and worse, aroused. Elizabeth. My reverie was broken by Fanny's exclamation as she looked past me and out the window. "That boy is like to drive me crazy. Late as he is. Look at him, running up here like his shirt tail's on fire. A gangly colored boy of about 16 was headed for the cafe in a big, sweaty, arm-pumping hurry. Such a hurry, in fact, that he almost dashed in the front door without thinking. Then he saw Fanny and me staring at him. He remembered his place, ducked his head, and went around back. Miss Fanny went to meet him. Through the window to the kitchen, I saw the two of them in serious conversation, the boy gesticulating wildly. I waited until Miss Fanny came back out front, then lifted my finger for more coffee. She brought the tin pot over to me. "What's the trouble?" I said. "Big trouble," she said quietly. "Seems like there was another hanging party last night." I kept my voice low. "You mean a lynching?" "2 of them," she said. Chapter 42. I took another sip of coffee and noticed that my hand was shaking some. Then I folded my napkin and headed back through the kitchen as if I intended to visit the privy. On the way, I detoured to the side of the room where the boy stood over a sink full of dirty dishes. "What happened, son?" I said. "Please, tell me everything." At first, the boy just stared at me without speaking a word. Fanny came up behind us. "It's okay, Leroy. This here's Mr. Corbett. He's all right to talk to." At last the boy spoke. "You know who is Annie?" he said. "The one cook for Miss Dickinson? She got a girl, Flossie, little older than me." I didn't know who he was talking about, but I nodded so he would continue. "Well, it was at Mr. Young," he said. "Mr. Jasper Young." I knew Jasper Young, who owned the hardware and feed stores. He was a quiet, grandfatherly man who exercised some influence behind the scenes in Eudora. "What does Jasper Young have to do with it?" "I can't say." The boy stared down at his dishes. "Why not?" He shot a look at Miss Fanny. "Lady present." "Oh, now come on, Leroy. Not one thing in this world you can't say in front of me." He wiggled and resisted, but at last he turned his eyes away from Fanny and fixed them on me. "Mr. Young wants some lovin' from Flossie. She didn't want to go along with it, so he forced the love out of her." What an incredible way to put it. He forced the love out of her. The rest of the boy's story came quickly. Flossie had told her mother of the rape. Annie told her husband. Within minutes, her husband and son, crazed with rage, broke into Jasper Young's home. They smashed china and overturned a table. Then they beat Jasper Young with their fists. A neighbor summoned a neighbor who summoned another neighbor. Within an hour, no more than that, Annie's husband and her son were hanging from ropes in the swamp behind the quarter. "Where are they exactly?" I asked the boy. "Out by Frog Creek." That was not the place I'd visited with Abraham, but I knew where it was. I practically ran all the way back to Maybell's. I didn't ask if I could borrow the bicycle. I just climbed on and rode out the old Macomb Road toward the swamp, toward Frog Creek. Chapter 43. I came upon a vision of horror, all too real. 2 men, one young, one older, naked and bloody, dangling from ropes. Already the smell of rotting flesh was rising in the morning heat. Flies were on the bodies. On the ground beneath the stiff hanging bodies, amid the cigar butts and discarded whiskey bottles, sat a woman and child. The woman was about 35 years old. The boy was no more than 4. He was touching the woman's face, touching the tears on her cheeks. The woman saw me and her face furrowed over in rage. "You go on now," she shouted. "They already dead. You can't do no more to hurt 'em." I walked closer, and she drew the boy to her as if to protect him from me. "I'm not going to hurt anybody," I said. "I'm a friend." She shook her head fiercely. "No." I wanted to comfort her terrible sobbing, but I stayed back. "Are you Annie?" She nodded. Now that I was close to the dangling bodies, I saw the welts left by whips, the bloody wounds covering almost every part of their bodies. The older man's arm hung down from his shoulder by a few bloody tendons. As the younger man slowly twisted, I saw that his testicles had been severed from his body. My voice finally came out choked. "Oh, I am so sorry." I noticed a pink, rubbery thing in her hand, something she kept stroking with her finger as she wept. She saw me looking. "You want to know what it is? It's my Nathan's tongue. They done cut his tongue out of his head. Stop him from sassing them." I looked up. Blood was thickly caked around the older man's mouth. "Oh, Jesus." "Ain't no Jesus," she said. "There ain't no Jesus for me." She wept so terribly I could not hold myself back. I knelt by her in the clearing. For a moment all was quiet but for her sobbing. Then a noise, a rustling in the underbrush, a crackling of twigs. I saw birds fly up in alarm. Someone was there. No doubt about it. Someone was watching us. And then out came several people, some men but also women, black people from the quarters, come to cut down the father and son who had been murdered. Part 3. Southern Funeral Favorites. Chapter 44. Could anyone possibly pedal a bicycle as slowly as I did going back to Eudora? I looked all around me. Although my little town still looked much as it had when I was a boy, now it was stained and tattered almost beyond recognition. Now the whole place was poisoned by torture and murder. The proof was still swinging from that oak tree out by the banks of Frog Creek. I thought about going to the police, but what good would it do? And besides, it would raise the question of why I had gone out to the scene of the lynchings. "You all soaking wet," Maybelle said as I trudged up onto her porch. "Sit here with me and have a lemonade." I put myself in a porch rocker and prepared to be disappointed, but the lemonade was cold, sweet, delicious. "Oh, I almost forgot," Maybelle said. "You had a visitor while you were gone, Senator Nottingham's wife." "Elizabeth? Did she leave any message?" "No, she said she would stop by again. But that reminds me, I know how much stock you put in getting the mail, and you did get some today. I put it in the front hall." On the hall table was a square, cream-colored envelope with my name written in Meg's delicate hand. I took the stairs 2 at a time. Inside my room, I removed my jacket and settled into the chair at the window for a good read. Dear Ben, I know I ought to be ashamed for not having written sooner. The girls have done very little else but remind me. They have pestered me about you night and day, but I've been busy doing almost all the housekeeping because Maisie had to go up to Trenton on account of her sister has been ill. Do not worry about me, other than sore muscles from wringing out the wash and from scrubbing the floors in the house. I am in good physical shape. These opening lines filled me with joy. My wife was still my wife. My fears were unjustified. The letter sounded so much like her, the teasing complaints, the emphatic descriptions, even the hint that she regarded Maisie's sister's problem as nothing more than a love of the grape. Later on, when I reflected on this moment, I wished I had stopped reading at that point. Ben, I might as well get to the point. I have suffered and wept